Yes, I work for the Iowa Department of Agriculture, and there'll be 3 speakers during this session. Myself, Dr. Paul Sundberg, and Dr. Chris Rodemaker. And then we will have time afterwards, if I don't run too long and cut into theirs, as far as for a panel discussion to answer questions. So starting off, work with the Department of Agriculture. Secretary Bill Northey is our state elected Secretary of Agriculture. He's my boss. Our imports in the state of Iowa. These are our current figures from the year 2015, and clearly you can see the numbers as far as what we import into our state, and certainly as far as in swine numbers are very large, and our numbers are actually up from last year. Importantly, it's to understand that about 80,000 plus animals move into our state 365 days a year. So it's extremely important, the health of the animals that are coming into our state, and so that we can make sure that there's no disease incursions, and trying to make sure that there isn't anything novel and new that comes into our state. You can see down here at the bottom, it's over 29 million animals, and that doesn't include our chickens and turkeys, which obviously are big industries in our state as well. Just a breakdown, sometimes it's of interest, and I do get a question, where do these all come from on the swine side? And you can see last year Illinois was the top state as far as where we imported our swine from. And it's on down the line, and it's broken out here also as far as where our breeding swine end up coming in. North Dakota moved up this year, so there's several breeding swine that came from North Dakota. Disease reporting, something that fits along with our whole theme about emerging diseases and what we are looking for and what we do when we do end up seeing them. Clearly our roles are provided in our code of law and our administrative rules. So we have the legal authority through code of law, our administrative rules, and along with that, we have the authority to enter premises. If we suspect that there is a problem, an emerging disease, we do have that authority as far as in the state of Iowa. And certainly euthanasia, if it ends up becoming, a necessary part. And clearly this last year in 2015, where we experienced problems with highly pathogenic avian influenza H5N2, there were several birds that were euthanized. And certainly as far as a final step along with that whole process is disinfection and making sure that decontamination is done as far as for restocking. So on the poultry side, a lot of the restocking has already occurred, and trying to get those individuals back into production. The specific codes, the rules, they're all cited here, but down at the bottom you'll see there's a listing about reportable diseases. Our list of reportable diseases mirrors what's in the World Animal Health Association or organization. They're multiple, they're listed, and you'll see, the swine disease is listed, but please note, what is declared as by our country, by OIE requirements, includes also diseases that sometimes are endemic, such as PRRS, TGE, they're also on the list. And it goes down as far as the other species, on down the line, and our list as far as in the state of Iowa, it also includes chronic wasting disease, which is not on the OIE list, but it is a reportable disease in our state and in other states in the U.S. So who reports if they suspect that there is something new, novel, emerging as required by rules? It can essentially be anyone. A lot of times, it'll be the private veterinarian that contacts us. It may be producers or auction markets or processing plants on down the list. But anyone who suspects or has knowledge of can report those and should report those to our office to, make a determination to follow up as far as on those. I also, as my role as state veterinarian in the state of Iowa, I'm the secretary for the Iowa Board of Veterinary Medicine. So we have the oversight for all licensing of veterinarians. Veterinarians that are adjacent in a state such as Minnesota that practice in Iowa, they must be licensed in the state of Iowa. And they need to be accredited when they're doing swine work, because many times there's certificates of veterinary inspection, health certificates, transportation documents as such, but our law requires that they be licensed in the state of Iowa. And it's interesting to note, of that 1,721 that reside in the state of Iowa, there's only about 550, maybe 600 that are food animal veterinarians or mixed animal veterinarians. All these veterinarians are not out there doing food animal or mixed animal veterinary practicing. Accredited veterinarians, I mentioned that before, they're licensed veterinarians that go through accrediting process, and part of their training is about foreign animal disease. And clearly, to become familiar, if they suspect a problem, to report it to the state or federal office. Accreditation is through USDA or USDA APHIS, and we work with them closely as far as in our state. And in our state structure, as far as in district veterinarians, we have them all listed here. This is all posted on our website with their contact information. You may not know them. You may have had contact with them. But we post their cell numbers so that you can get a hold of them on weekends or in the evening. I get calls on the weekends, in the evening, and I don't mind it at all. I practiced 26 years. I was used to being on call and never feel hesitant about giving me a call. Because there's a lot of people that do, and they want to do things right, and it may be an auction market in Wyoming or Montana that's calling about our animal admissions requirements. I might also mention, as far as in this slide, there are, of these, I have 5 state district veterinarians, and there are also 3 federal veterinary medical officers. All but this new individual that has just come in are all foreign animal disease diagnosticians, as well as myself and our assistant state veterinarian, Dr. Jeff Kyson. So we've gone through training. We know what to go through in the processes as far as for collecting samples. 2005, we talk about foreign animal disease investigations, and we track those, and they're all assigned a case number. And this last year, we happened to see cases of Seneca Valley virus. We do about 25 to 50 foreign animal disease investigations a year. It doesn't cost the producer anything. The testing is done for free, and we collect samples to make sure that we don't have a foreign animal disease, that's emerging as far as in our state. From the graph, you can see those numbers, and please note that orange or red line there indicates those cases that were Seneca Valley virus cases that became, or that were positive on further sampling and testing. Those samples were collected off the farm during a foreign animal disease investigation, and we have the great luxury in our state not only to have the National Animal Health Center up at Ames, which consists of the Center for Veterinary Biologics approving all vaccines in the U.S., there's an agricultural research services component as far as in this, and a National Veterinary Services Labs area. So all foreign animal diseases for equine and poultry go there for confirmation testing. Anything as far as swine, bovine, sheep, goats, all of those on cloven-hooved animals will go to its counterpart NVSL at Plum Island. So samples that were collected this year from Seneca virus cases were split sample testing. Our diagnostic lab at Iowa State University is approved as a National Animal Health Laboratory Network laboratory to do foot and mouth disease testing. It really improves our rapid response and being able to get a diagnosis quickly by having those samples split and either driven into the lab, usually is what is done, and we can many times get the results the same day or the same evening. If they're there in the morning, we will have those results by the end of the day. So what if we do have a new and emerging disease? Here, as far as on this, Again, our USDA counterpart in the federal office, the assistant district director and myself have been notified. You know, we assign out a foreign animal disease diagnostician, one of those district veterinarians, whether they're state or federal, and samples are collected. You know, clearly they are informed that nothing moves off of that site. And if it comes out and it's positive, quarantine zones will be established, depending on the disease, but clearly through highly pathogenic avian influenza by World Animal Health Organization standards, it's a 10-kilometer zone or a 6.2-mile zone. And here's a map of what we went through on highly pathogenic avian influenza. And certainly and clearly it ends up having a lot of restrictions when zones are put in place, and there's a lot of limitations as far as for continuity of business, moving products across state lines as well as within the state borders, and a lot of surveillance testing. Managing 77 quarantine zones or control zones requires a lot of people. Not only the infected premises, but everybody else that's impacted in the zone. Going back to Seneca Valley virus, it's usually something that we had seen or heard about maybe once every 2 or 3 years. And this year was a little bit different when it ended up starting. You know, there was a private veterinarian middle and latter part of July that called. 3 pigs coming back from a county fair exhibition. Noticed that there was something unusual. There was some blistering on the snouts on these 3 pigs. They were in various stages. There was some lameness and there was some hoof erosions. And that individual called my office. You know, I think we got something going on. I called the federal office. We assigned a diagnostician. Samples were collected and they went into Plum Island as well as Iowa State, and it came back positive for Seneca Valley virus. But it was negative for the foreign animal diseases, which is extremely good. Well, this is what it looks like. And you can see as far as on here, you know, there was a blister that broke as far as on the snout, and then you can see the erosions as far as above the hoof wall. Looks just like foot and mouth disease. You can't distinguish it clinically as far as from foot and mouth disease. So accumulating all this information, I tried to keep track of where all these cases were, because we were starting to see cases coming in, and you saw that epi curve as far as, you know, where those numbers occurred, and we were sending people here and there as far as in collecting these samples. So I tracked it as far as where the counties were. Our first 3 cases happened to be exhibition swine, one north central Iowa, the second one south central Iowa post-exhibition. And then there was a farrow to finish operation that ended up sending samples into the diagnostic lab on some increased piglet mortality that came back as Seneca Valley virus positive. And with that, early on, we had the Iowa State Fair coming on. And clearly working with their executive board, taking them pictures, we wanted to look and make sure that there was nothing going on at the state fair. And we're set up routinely in working with them as far as collecting samples of suspicious diseases, including influenza, PED, and now we added this on the list. There actually were 3 exhibitors at the Iowa State Fair that were positive. And they were sent home. Anything that's ill is sent home. But samples were collected, and again, they were positive for Seneca Valley virus, for Seneca virus A. So recap, yes, we started out in July, and our last case confirmation was the middle of December. But you can see the breakdown of those that I have tracked of the 33, and I'm sure there were probably more as far as in the state of Iowa. But, you know, exhibition swine, you know, on down the line as far as for that, including processing facilities. And the last processing facility was a large processor. It was picked up by APHIS, or by FSIS inspectors. Samples were collected, and they were again split, went to Iowa State. But it stops that plant, and there's a lot of concern. And people are probably familiar with what happened at Hormel a few years back, and certainly it created much more of a stir when that happened. But in working with the processor, with FSIS and APHIS, this and that, we ended up getting that resolved within a short fashion by the end of the day. Our FAD investigations, just to reiterate that and to show this slide again as far as what our epi curve was and where it's ended, we have not had any suspected cases or reported cases in 2016. Will we see others in 2016? It's a big question. I have no idea. I don't have the crystal ball. Continuity of business is extremely important. We found this out with avian influenza. On the swine side and the pork producers, I applaud them because premises registration is key. Premises registration, having that on diagnostic lab forms is repetitive as far as in keeping up and getting information concise and consistent when it gets reported. Some people don't write the best, and so once they get all information entered into the system, using that from having a premises ID is free. And certainly as far as with industry working around, by and large, all the swine production systems are registered. So biosecurity is important. Prevention is profitable. It's key. You keep out disease, and certainly it's to everyone's advantage.